All right, so aloha everyone. Welcome to our April 2025 edition of Blue Planet Alliance Virtual Island Workshop. Really honored to bring together these islands and sustainable leaders from around the world to share insights and progress in the journey towards 100% renewable energy. So this series really highlights the pioneering efforts of our fellows and our ambassadors across the globe. And today we actually have a total of 23 countries joining us. So that's really good. So today we're really proud to feature two visionary leaders. First, we have Anthony Greer, Director of Department of Energy, Government of Vanuatu. And then we have Stuart Crinler. He's the Chief Empowerment Officer from Sunnyside Solar in Bermuda. Now, I just want to give a quick announcement. So please remember to keep all questions for the Q&A session, but also in the meantime, you could use the chat box to ask any questions and we'll get back to it. All right, so let's dive into this session. So to begin, let's welcome Anthony Greer from Vanuatu to share insights on their nation's renewable energy progress. Anthony, you could take it away.
Thank you, Aaron. Hello, everyone. Greetings from Vanuatu. Firstly, before I begin, I'd like to thank PPA for the invite and allowing me to share Vanuatu's experience and update to date in terms of our transition pathway. So, yeah, without further ado, let's dive straight into the presentation. Next slide, please. Next. So I think firstly, just the overview in terms of the policies aligning to the SDG 7. Vanuatu has what we call the People's Plan, which is the umbrella policy that consolidates all sectoral policy, but particularly for the energy sector, there's two key pillars in the People's Plan, which is the environmental pillar 2.3 and economic pillar 2.1, where energy comes in. And then further right, you would see the NERM, which is the National Energy Roadmap 2016-2030, which aligns to the People's Plan as well. So we have five key priorities under the National Energy Roadmap of Vanuatu. That includes accessible energy, affordable, secure, and reliable. And then sustainable energy and green growth. And then in terms of our global commitment, aligning to the Paris Agreement, we've pretty much translated what's in our energy roadmap, and particularly for the renewable energy generation, our ambition is to transition close to 100% by 2030. And there's different pathways to which I will be presenting soon. And then also similarly under our long-term low emission development strategies as well. Next slide, please. So this is just a heads up of the current electricity generation status. Apologies, I don't have data from last year, but this is just an extract from 2023. So we have more or less 8 or 9 key islands where there's 24/7 supply of electricity. So you would see the generation contribution from its generation sources. So think the one in yellow is pretty much the renewable energy contribution that I've highlighted there. So you would see a very low number of contribution from renewable energy, and that would indicate that Vanuatu is still way back in terms of trying to achieve its 2030 targets. Next slide, please. So this is just um, a heads up of um, where Vanuatu wants to head in terms of its 2030 targets. So you would see the graph below. By 2030, we plan to achieve 100%. But in 2022, you would see how much renewable energy that has been contributed into the generation mix. And that is accumulative across the entire country. And 2023 in green. So roughly sits around 13 or 14%. Renewable energy generation source that we have at the moment are basically hydro, wind, and solar. We used to be in the past been implementing coconut oil blended, um, but back in 2012, the utility decided to put a hold to that because of the market fluctuation. But also with the regulatory regime where it's more based on the least cost of energy approach. So the utility would find themselves ending up with a least cost option provided through diesel. Next slide. So again, recently we've through the support of the DFAT, the Australians, and collaboration with the University of New South Wales in Australia, we developed or mapped out our energy transition plan. How do we intend to achieve that 100% mark by 2030? So this is just a layout of how much renewable has been contributed into the generation mix since 2015, and then a modeling, a focused modeling up to 2030 that we intend to deliver. Next slide, please. So those are some of the high-level modelings that we've done based on Vanuatu's NDC. So on your left, it's pretty much what's in our initial NDC. So we have two options of bringing us up to 2030. So option one, you would see a combination of solar and coconut oil. And then option two, similar contributions, but however, including geothermal coming into the mix. So this is just the high level, but that would depend on the financial support that we receive. Bearing in mind that Vanuatu's NDC is conditional, subject to technical financial support. So beneath that, you would see the data in so the current area generation is roughly around 10 gigawatt hour. And then diesel, the intention is to try and achieve 73 gigawatt hour by 2030 worth of renewable energy generation. Far right is a modeling, is a model delivered or done by the utility themselves, what they anticipate to bring Vanuatu to that 100% mark. So you would see in 2019, renewable energy contribution is more or less 17% coming from solar, wind. But then far right, you would see that 100% RE composition where, again, it's more or less similar to our NDC mapping, where most of the contribution we've anticipated to come from coconut oil. Uh, and I must inform you that recently we've just completed what we call a coconut oil for fuel um, generation, and that is to revive um the coconut industry with the intention of supplementing diesel with local coconut oil that has been produced locally, and noting well the massive benefits that copra or coconut oil would bring to the country's economy, like the feeds and other byproducts of copra, if you think about it, and other social benefits of it as well. So that's why we thought that it's best to capitalize on whatever available resources we have, but also bearing in mind um, that the benefits that it would bring largely to the country's economy um, is what we anticipated that promoting coconut oil um, would be a plus for us once we uh, couple that into the entire energy mix for Vanuatu. Next slide, please. So, like I mentioned earlier, as part with the recent energy transition planning and modeling we did uh, jointly with the University of New South Wales. So this is just an overview of the scenarios. So you have scenario one as the base case, which is year 24, and then scenario two, um, more or less the same, but then there's an inclusion of added solar PV plus storage, a project called Renewable Energy Solar um, System for Evate, which is the main island, the capital, and Tana, grid connected system. So that scenario too, with the inclusion of the solar PV system for the two islands, that is where you could see contributions from the solar and the storage. Scenario three, again, it's another modeling outcome that we try to align as well with the options of that we've outlined in our NDC. And then also scenario four, you would see geothermal coming in to couple with coconut oil and storage. So scenario three and four, pretty much those two options to bring us to 100%, the anticipated 100% mark by 2030. Next slide, please. So again, more or less the similar modeling, but this represent the renewable energy fraction per the four scenarios that I've indicated earlier. You will note that in there, under this modeling, we've not factored in pipeline IPPs into the mix. But Joe is on the call and can add further to that. But we've recently Mana Pacific has recently engaged into a PPA with Fund Power, who is a utility operating in Tana Island, further down south. So, but bear in mind that this modeling is subject to change. Like I said, depending on technical financial support, but also what's coming in uh, to try and address those different scenarios. Next slide, please. So again, this, like I said earlier, those are the possible pathways to bring us to the 2030 100% mark. But far right is just a summary of the megawatt hour required for scenario 2 and scenario 3. Scenario 3 and scenario 4, sorry. Next slide. So what's required? What's needed? What are the prerequisite for us to achieve those that 100% max? So we have these four scenarios, but I think point 1 up to 7 is what's needed for the Department of Energy to start working on and ensure we have those in place so that I think we all can agree that as part of the due diligence for renewable energy projects, uh, like for countries like Vanuatu, we need um, the to conduct proper due diligence and feasibility study to inform the larger investment at large, noting the different situations we have in country when it comes to project implementation. Next slide, please. So in terms of policy or legislative reforms trying to accommodate renewable energy or promoting renewable energy, I think these are some of the key uh, policy or strategies that we've tried and developed for the last 5 to 7 years. So firstly, the National Energy Roadmap, the updated one, our enhanced NDC, and then recently, last year, we've developed our NDC investment strategy, focusing particularly on two subsector, which is the electricity sector and forest. But for the electricity sector, we feel that that's the low-hanging fruit for us to achieve our NDC. Likewise for the forest sector. So it's a key strategic document for us that outlines pretty much the financial and technical requirements that we would need to bring us up to 100% by 2030. And again, like I mentioned earlier, the energy transition planning framework and the capacity expansion model, that is a modeling tool that at any point in time, whenever there's a new renewable energy capacity added or is in the pipeline, then we fit that into the modeling to provide us with an outcome of the pretty much tracking where we are or how much contribution that would deliver towards that 100% mark. And then the coconut oil for fuel generation strategy. Also, as of 2019, and again, last year, we've amended the Electricity Supply Act to provide provisions for IPP. In the past, there's no dedicated provisions for IPP. So now with the amendments, it allows for IPPs to participate in the sector. And then we have solar rooftop policies as well to provide for household systems that are connected to the grid as well. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. This is just a outline of the existing or current renewable energy systems we have in country in different islands. So you would see a combination of hydro system, solar, um, and wind, pretty much. And then far right is pipelines or ongoing projects that are currently under construction. So you would see the solar plus battery storage. For Tanan Malekula, we have the Japanese supporting us with the phase 3 of the hydro in Santo, and that would bring Santo Island by 2027 uh, up to 100% renewable energy generation in that island. And then you have solar PV mini grids, the two coconut oil that we will be procuring to add that into the Port Vila generation mix. ADB is also supporting us with solar. The main utility in Port Vila, UNELCO, is also investing in a 3 megawatt grid connected PV. We have Mana Pacific, like I mentioned earlier, with the IPP, and then prospecting initiative for geothermal in Nevate and Tana. Next slide, please. Thank you, Thomas. I think that's all from me. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I mean, it's great that you guys have a transition plan ready. That's the first thing. That's amazing. I think this coconut oil uh aspect is definitely interesting as well. And I guess off of that, you'll be revamping the coconut industry, I believe is what you mentioned. And that's positives for the economy as well, right? That serves as a prime example, using resources that around you, to make a change. So next, we'll move over to Bermuda. Let's hear from Stuart Schindler on how Bermuda is navigating its path to 100% renewable energy. Stuart, take it away.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because I guess we're covering a lot of time zones here. But it's a real pleasure to be here to talk about two things I love very much, which is renewable energy and Bermuda. And so I'm Stuart Krindler, and thanks so much for everybody's time and feedback afterwards. Yeah, you go to the next slide. So this is my first AI generated image showing kind of going from where we are now with the smokestack to where we need to go with basically solar and wind. Um, and I want to say a massive well done to Anthony. That was a great presentation. Mine's certainly going to have less info in it on the technical level, which I love to speak about. I could speak to that directly with anybody, but I thought we only had 10 minutes. I wanted to keep it succinct. And if anyone can't hear what I'm saying or can't understand me well, because sometimes I'm told I have a strong accent, please just put your hand up at the react button down there and I'll repeat or slow down or whatever. All right, please go to the next slide. So, who am I? Stuart Krindler. My bio, I started in the construction industry quite young. I was lucky to have two amazing grandmothers that took me snorkeling and feeding the fish when I was very young, and a very pivotal moment in my life to teach me about altruism. And so when I went to university, I started in physics, and then quickly learned people don't really listen to scientists, sadly, as much as they should. They listen to businessmen. So I said, you gotta talk dollars and cents to get things done in this world if you want to make a positive change. So for better or worse. And so I switched to business when I finished that, and I finished in the university in Australia, which was a phenomenal 6 month way to finish my degree. And there's a photovoltaic lab there in Coogee Beach. And then I was a substitute teacher when I got back. My mom was quite sick with cancer, and that allowed me to make a decision each day. Do I stay with and take care of her, or should I go teach? And that was learned a lot about how to have patience with young children, etc. And through that, I paid my own way to go to a maiden voyage where the Spirit of Bermuda was being built. It's down there in the bottom left. And because there was a guy supposed to show up from Princeton to teach the 7 habits of leadership or something. And the guy didn't show. So I said, well, I'm going to sail home on that boat. And I stayed and helped him work on the boat. And that became an important piece of my life, which will come to later. And then started in the solar hot water industry as a lot of things where the solar was very expensive. It was about 4 or 5 times as much as it was now, solar photovoltaic to make electricity. Um, and when my mom passed in '07, my sister and I drove from Tucson, Arizona, up north to British Columbia to visit cousins we'd never met. And one of the stops was in Hopland, California, the Solar Living Institute. It was the place where the first retail solar panel in the USA was sold, back in the '80s type of thing. And it was an incredible experience. I did a 9-month internship there. I lived in a yurt and started learning about solar courses. Eventually was teaching them, as well as all sorts of other courses from, gray water to permaculture, but really focused on solar energy. And I got my NABCEP certification there. And I, highly recommend NABCEP for anybody in the islands. There's now a lot more NABCEP representation from Caribbean islands. It's if you want to really learn the highest standards of how to install solar photovoltaics, it's probably one of the best out there. And there's also some great ones and probably some different ones in the Pacific. Um, when I came back, the same people that were involved in the Spirit of Bermuda um, were also involved in creating a new renewable energy company, or converting an old 4th-generation company. They had done solar hot water from 1935. And so I joined them, and it was just me and one other person, and he was out doing charters, sailboat charters. So I was, how do we get this company going? And learned a lot of installations along the way, probably more than 100 people that worked with us over the years. 2023, my father-in-law got quite sick. So I stepped back from B Solar to focus on family health. And luckily he's doing better now. And I just did some consulting and started looking into the electric construction industry. And by the way, they have electric skid steers out there. Pretty impressive. First Green Industries. So I have a little mini one in Vermont I'll be bringing in soon, and just continue to electrify, all things in our island. So Green Rock was a really important environmental charity, one of the few back in 2007, I think it started, and I got more involved in 2011. Our power company in Bermuda had no regulation up until 2016 when the Electricity Act was tabled. So that was a big deal. And then we needed our first IRP, our Integrated Resource Plan, which is basically a 20-year plan. And the default plan of was the default plan was the utilities plan, which was 5% renewables by 2040. And it was LNG, which was going to get, rammed down our throats. It would have been a $300 million capital investment before it even started to flow. And Bermuda is quite small. The volume of the LNG means we'd have to have a custom-built ship. It would have been incredibly expensive. So we saw this was a power play, and we got together, a big grassroots campaign, and we got 800 people to write in against it, from 9 years old to 90 years old. I think my granny wrote the toughest letter, and that ended up being shelved, and we have a better energy plan, thank goodness. And we'll talk more about the IRP process. Currently, I'm the Chief Empowerment Officer at Sunnyside Solar. It's Bermuda's only nonprofit solar company. And our focus is to empower the underserved. So I'm really excited about that. We've done quite a few charity projects for Meals on Wheels and people that have physical disabilities. And I'll be working with the Diabetes Association to do a project with them soon, hopefully. And of course, wonderful to be a Blue Planet Alliance fellow and unofficial ambassador. Really, really impressed and love the work that everyone's doing. And so big well done and kudos for everyone here. So next slide, please, Miramel. So Bermuda, facts and stats. So we're this teeny speck, right, in the middle of the Atlantic. We're probably the most isolated, island out there. 65,000 people, 21 square miles, incredibly densely populated. So unfortunately, we can't plant enough coconut trees to make that work. So I'm going to have to learn from Anthony on that one. So we're really limited by our resources. We have no fresh water. We collect our rainwater. So we have no hydro, no geothermal opportunity. So for Bermuda, we're stuck. It's solar PV and it's offshore wind. We didn't even have enough space for onshore wind. So that's a really important piece of the puzzle. The other important thing is, 50% of our homes are rented. So that makes it challenging for solar PV. If the landlord doesn't want it, it's not going to happen. So we've got to change some policies to make that easier. And it's really great to see what Hawaii's done with that. We've got one central power station and they're burning heavy fuel oil and a little bit of diesel to try to clean things up every now and again. Peak demand's about 110 megawatts and, 590 gigawatt hours. So we are pretty wasteful. We're like, we're moving a bit towards like how the US is in terms of being wasteful, unfortunately. So a lot of energy per person type of thing. AC, pretty much everyone's got AC, everything's paved, everyone's grid tied. So there's some opportunities and challenges with that. We have a incinerator for our trash. It's a good way to deal with trash on a small island in some ways. It's not a good way to make low carbon electricity, but at least we do make some electricity from that. So that is, small percentage of our electricity. We just have one utility scale PV installation, 24,000 panels out there on a disused runway. You can see where it says St. David's Island in the east. There's a little finger sticking out south. That was the emergency landing for the space shuttles for NASA. Bermuda was the place. And so that's no longer a thing. So we just filled it up with solar, which was great. It's pretty much the only place we can do a big project like that. The issue is the inverters, about 125 of them, are 18 inches above the ground level, and that's only about a foot and a half above sea level. So in a big storm at high tide, I'm concerned salt water will come in there and just wipe everything out. Hopefully that does not happen. We've been through a few hurricanes. Luckily, they were at low tide, funnily, and we only lost a few modules, so that was built quite well, and hopefully that remains that way. We've got about 1,500 distributed PV systems, and that's what I want to see more of. 10% of our existing rooftops would be more than 100 megawatts of solar. So we've got enough existing rooftops to make it happen and not take up any green space. We've got enough brownfield, and that empowers more people. So I really want to see us push towards more distributed solar. There's at least 50 people in the industry, probably more like 100. So we're actually going to see solar employing more people than the Belco's generation plant. And I think that's going to be really exciting. Because as we know, the fuel is free with solar, so you can create more jobs and lower the cost of energy. Offshore wind, we don't have any of that yet. I don't think there's many islands that do, and that's, it's a bit controversial. There's so many naysayers, but really we have to have it, and we'll get onto that. And because we're so far north, we're not close enough to the equator. You can't do it with solar alone. We really need wind to be 100%. And 5 turbines, just 5 big fans out there would be like 30 to 40% of our current energy usage. So that'll be a huge thing when it happens, and we have to make it happen. You flick the switch on that, and 40% of our emissions are gone for the year. It's pretty exciting. Next slide, please. So, yeah, this link, I asked Marimo, if it's possible, I can share this link because Rocky Mountain Institute has been a huge help in the world. A lot of people may not be aware in the islands. Rocky Mountain Institute started like in the 70s in Colorado, a gentleman named Amory Lovins. And he was actually consulting and giving advice to Jimmy Carter. It's an impressive piece of history. Jimmy Carter takes the advice, puts some solar hot water panels on the White House, and there was a plan to use energy efficiency as the lowest hanging fruit, the cheapest thing. And we have to remember that as island destinations, like we don't want to be throwing renewable energy, which is the most important, if we were peeing away 20 to 30% of our energy and wasting it on inefficient light bulbs, inefficient appliances. So energy efficiency is like the least sexy thing, but it is really important to get right. So that path America was on would have been just a whole different world. But Reagan came in and he had the oil money. Thank you. And they actually paid someone to rip the solar panels off of the off of the White House. It's a crazy story, but it's true. So luckily, someone engaged RMI who continued to do great work in the background, and they'll work with anybody. Can you guys see my screen there? Is that
Um,
if I scroll down?
oh, Stuart, I'm sharing the screen.
Okay, I see it's working. It's just a little delay, so I'll just keep that in mind. So Rocky Mountain Institute, thank you, Marimel. They'll work with any corporation that's doing good stuff, which is great. So some anonymous donor said, go to Bermuda and help them out. And we got very lucky. Their vision, what they helped a bit on the solar side, but also with the electrification of our bus fleet. So I'm borrowing their timeline because it helps put things into perspective. There's the solar finger that we talked about earlier. There's them signing the deal. Solar finger again. So that's the 24,000 modules there. And I see the delay as I'm flipping back and forth, just waiting for it to catch up. Pardon. But we're getting there. There we go. It's pretty fun. It's like a 3-second delay. A little longer than that, actually. Um, But you'll see in a minute the pink and blue characteristic buses of Bermuda now being electrified. And we've got 70% of our bus fleet is now electric, which is massive. And it reminds me, kudos to Blue Planet Alliance. It's not just 100% renewable by 2045 that we want. We want to be 100% carbon neutral as island destinations also, right? So how are we going to power these? Are we still going to be burning diesel and inefficient vehicles? Or are we going to be using much more efficient electric vehicles and then powering them with solar and wind also? So that's really important to note. So it's going to take a little minute to scroll down there, but in 2022, we surpassed 7 megawatts of solar, which was great. And that was mostly distributed. And then when the airport finger came online, so we're now at about 13 megawatts, probably closer to 15 at the end of this year, which is good progress. However, we're still talking about less than 5% of renewable energy. And I see the delay kicking in, but we're pretty much at the end there. And thank you, Marimel. We could switch back now. And that's, showing what the wind might look like. Okay. So challenges and opportunities, right? Bermuda being such a small place, importing a bunch of oil, we got a major electricity price here, right? And it's shocking. And it's really hurting the wealth gap, which really troubles me. So as you see, 64 cents per kilowatt hour is probably one of the most expensive in the entire world. And the more you use, the more you pay. So, typically high energy users are high income earners. It's not always the case, but most of the time. So if you get a solar PV system, you're saving at that rate if you're self-consuming in real time. So McMansion with a whole bunch of energy use during the day, they're saving the 64 cents. It's awesome for them. Maybe they got a $3,000 a month Belco bill, and I'm serious, I've seen these bills. And maybe they want to chop it down to $1,000. They'll get like a 5-year payback on that. Really good investment. Now, if there's a working household that has a, $500 bill and they want to cut that down, it'll probably take twice as long because they're going to be saving at 14 cents because during the day they're turning everything off, just the fridge is running, they're exporting a bunch of solar for a much lower rate. So that is a huge impediment on top of the fact that probably they need to borrow the money. They don't have that, $30,000 just sitting around in a bank account like wealthy people do. So we need to really shift this. And of course, battery storage is one way. And I've seen some incredible developments of lithium iron phosphate prices lately. And hopefully that's not going to change with all this tariff stuff we got going on. But we got to do some better policy making to make it fairer for everyone to get solar. Otherwise, it's going to slow the transition to the 100%. And that's really important. We go to the next slide. Thank you. So the next slide, we're going to talk about how important offshore wind is, right? Really that is the answer. We have to have offshore wind. What's the life cycle cost of energy for offshore wind? For Bermuda, we're talking 15 to 20 cents a kilowatt hour, which is still a lot for a lot of places. But remember, that's about a quarter to a third of what we're paying now. That means that coming into the grid, the power company could still make a profit on it, and we're still lowering cost incredibly for everyone. In winter, we've got about half as much sun than in summer. So June 21st, twice as much sun than December 21st. And in winter, it's blowing a gale pretty regularly, or at least more often. So it's an important tandem. They work really well together. And again, like we talked about, 5 turbines, 40% of our energy, just like that, is a big deal. And the problem is no one wants to pay for the wind study at nacelle height, which is turbine height. So you gotta, with solar, you can just look at a site and you'll know what it's going to produce for the next 20 years based on existing data and the shading of that area. With wind, you have to put a revenue grade wind measuring device at height, at location. So that's out in the ocean, very, 60 meters up or whatever. And we're talking about $1 million. And so we were going to do it, and then COVID came and totally hit us. So we're still struggling from COVID, and hopefully with the new IRP coming now, that we'll get a chance to make sure that happens. And that takes me on to my next slide. That the good news is there's new sheriffs in town, as they say. So we got a sharp new politician recently voted in, heading the Department of Energy. She'll be a craft if anybody's going. And we want to encourage her to, cement her legacy by being the first to sign the 100% by 2045 for Bermuda. Intelligent, socially conscious, and a doer. And then under her remit is the Department of Energy. She's also the Minister for the Cost of Living. So she's really got a mandate to bring down cost of living and understands that oil, burning oil to make electricity is not helping anybody. And it's going to leave us completely dependent on whatever happens in Russia or Iran. If the oil price goes up by twice as much, we're stuck. And Adrian Dill is a wonderful, wise champion of the environment as well as practical, solution-based. And he was actually part of the team that got seconded. He got seconded to transport to electrify the bus fleet. So he's got a track record of doing good work. So I'm really hopeful that these two young Bermudians are going to come in and make a difference and not be scared to make the tough decisions that need to be made. And that brings me to the regulatory authority, because they represent the government, and the government wants to see things change. The regulatory authority, sometimes it's not doing what they want. And I know in a lot of places, there's a lot more control of the government and regulatory authority and utility. In Bermuda, the laws are very strict. And because we had that 2000 Electricity Act, which in some people think was outdated from the start. We learned these very highly paid consultants from outside Bermuda, rubber stamped and copied and pasted from another jurisdiction. They didn't allow wheeling, which means we can't have community solar. There were some other things in there which made us very surprised in the renewable sector, because it seemed like it was going to hold us back. And sure enough, it seems like it was more about ensuring the utility's profitability than forcing the RA to be a neutral force and focus on Team Bermuda. I think Kauai in Hawaii is an example where it's a co-op, and you see prices have been much more stable. They got 30% solar penetration by energy. It works much better when you're focused on what's the best decision for the country versus, protecting the profits of a utility. So there's work on the way to amend the act, and I'm really encouraged by that. And I'm very glad Blue Planet Alliance is involved so that we can hopefully get something better for the people. So those are the challenges. We've got some to overcome, but we can go to the next slide, please, Miramel. We'll stay encouraged though, because I sometimes get down about how tough things are out there, but this is really good to remember, right? 2021 is probably even better recently, but all new electricity generation, 84% of it is renewables, right? So to do something different is ridiculous. It just makes sense, and it's happening. Next slide, please. And this is the reminder of where we were at. The proposal on the left, this is back in 2018 now, that was gonna be Bermuda's future. It was gonna be fossil fuels, 95%, a little bit of solar. They actually, if you look at it, they actually had the solar reducing over time, right? It's just ridiculous. They tried to pull one over on the island, and we can't forget this because they need to remember this is they've got this legacy. They've got to prove to us that they're not trying to do something. I'm hearing talk they want to try to bring LNG back, and we're not going to let that happen. And so the Better Energy Plan on the right was what won the day. And you see the effect of efficiency. And this is a much more accurate model done by Etude from London. And it shows you just by replacing devices, more efficient fridges, more efficient air conditioners, we're going to be using much less electricity. And this is with 100% uptake of EVs over time. So EVs are so much more efficient that even adding them in, you still get a reduction on the grid unless you've got some crazy population growth. But California is an example where population has almost tripled over the years, but their electricity has remained stable because of efficiency. So hopefully we're going to see more of a future like this, and then we got to do 10 more years where we're 100% by then, not just 85%. So next slide, please. So back to Green Rock, who really made a lot of this happen. It's just a reminder we have this vision for a much better future. We want to make things affordable, but we need to breathe clean air. And who's doing the math on the healthcare costs of lung cancer, throat cancer, asthma, et cetera, from all the pollutants we breathe? Next slide. So if you do ever get down, or if you just want to know what are the most factual ways to help make a change, this book, Not the End of the World, is incredible read. It's written by a woman who worked for Our World in Data, who were tracking all the COVID sicknesses and deaths and things. So it's just completely evidence-based decision making on plastics, farming, renewable energy. Highly recommended, especially for those who are who get down and need to stay encouraged. So vote with your dollars, right? Vote with your choices. Good change is happening. Let's make it happen faster. Thank you. Sorry to take up so much time.
Thank you so much, Stuart, for that presentation. And I agree with you. We're working towards 100% renewable energy, but also we need to take into account our carbon footprint as well. Yeah. So thank you very much, both Anthony and Stuart, for those inspiring presentations. I think your insights into clean energy transition for both Vanuatu and Bermuda truly impactful in your own ways. And I feel like this was a good comparison between the Caribbean and the other side of the world, yeah? So I want to open the floor now to some questions. Feel free to raise your hand or post in the chat. And following the discussion, we'll have some other updates.
Just want to add, Stuart, thanks for inviting Blue Planet team to be part of the steering committee for Bermuda. We're going to be doing every 2 or 3 weeks. I'm trying to steer the conversation in the right direction. Just one thing on wheeling. We just had progress in Hawaii on wheeling. We just passed a legislation, so I would love to share that with you. Jeff said he got it pushed through. That was a big breakthrough this year, so I would love to share that with you.
Excellent. Good news. Thank you.
Maybe, Stuart, you could start us off because I don't see any questions in the chat, but you could just give the audience a little bit about what we're actually doing with you guys, what you brought us in to do. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I've been really trying to get Blue Planet Alliance aligned with the government. It was great timing with the change in the Department of Energy. And so there's a steering committee. There seems to be a recognition that the current Electricity Act is not fit for purpose. It's not doing what needs to be done for the people. For example, in 10 years, our electricity prices have doubled, right? And there's people in Bermuda that can't have healthcare costs they can't afford, groceries they can't afford, and now electricity they can't afford. And they're having to choose. I can pay 2 out of 3 of these things. Which one am I going to do, right? It's not a good situation for a lot of people. We've got this big wealth gap between the haves and have-nots. So the government sees that, and to their credit, they said, "Look, we need to make a steering committee to get a bunch of experts together. We've got an economist, we've got myself, and we've got some ex-utility people. And it's great to have Blue Planet Alliance there to remind them, hey, in Hawaii, this is what we did. So, we got to make a legislative change to change the Electricity Act, which is going to force how the regulatory authority does pricing, et cetera. And, it's going to take quite an effort. So I really appreciate Blue Planet Alliance's expertise to get involved and hopefully guide things the right way and be an objective arbitrator when there's likely going to be things that come up where the utility wants to push to make more money and say we can't do it. It's renewables are too fickle, and we can say, well, here's evidence to show how it has been done. What we learned from Kauai, for example.
And
That
add
answers
to
that.
that, we were approached by Stewart on dissecting the RRP that was at the table, and so we
Yes.
hired a former regulatory commissioner out of Colorado, Ron Binns, to dissect the report, and he came back with 20-pager, and that was submitted to the government. So hopefully that's part of the discussion as well too going forward. So a little bit exciting stuff. But Blue Planet is officially
Yes.
part of the steering committee with Bermuda today.
Yeah, I appreciate you reminding me of that. There's a lot going on at once with the IRP still in, consideration, and that's massive. If we get that right in conjunction with the legislation, it'll be a big win and make us much, much closer to getting to 100% much faster. Because it's going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. So why waste time on stranded assets like LNG or, buying another diesel generator? It just doesn't make sense. Let's go straight to solar and wind or geothermal, whatever works in your area, or coconut oil, which is amazing.
Might not have too much time left, but I just want to give the floor to
Yeah.
Joe or Olia to just maybe a 1-minute snapshot of the signing you just did with Vanuatu, just to recap on Anthony's comment earlier. Joe?
No, thank you, Francois. I'll make it quick. All of this is great from a policy perspective, but I'll quote Hank Rogers a little bit here. It takes not just an expert like Blue Planet to figure out how to do the policy and how to do things like they've done in a number of different islands around the world. It takes all of you that are there on the islands that know what you need and know how you can take examples that were done somewhere else and get from policy and commitment and international agreements to actually executing projects. And certainly we're fortunate to have this first project with Vanuatu that we'll be working on. But Stuart, I was reminiscing about the Harrington Sound discussion that we had at the fellowship when I tried to push a little bit of floating solar into consideration. And in this call, I was talking a little bit to Sri Lanka about the Madura Oya Reservoir 100-megawatt floating solar that they had on the book some time back. But there's a lot of tools out there. All we do is we try to help you find the tools to accomplish what you're trying to do the fastest way possible, complementing the back end of all the work that you guys do with BPA. And that's it in a nutshell, Francois. And we're proud to be working with Vanuatu, and hopefully you'll see us somewhere near you in the near future.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
We have one question before we go. From June. So just a request, she says, to see how coconut oil goes in a few years, how it's done and the labor force needed, etc. She just wants like an overview from Anthony, if possible.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yeah, it's a very good question here. I think to simply answer your question, based on the challenges that we've explored in the past, not only in the pricing that I've mentioned, the stable market, but also in terms of the labor forces as well. We see recently a lot of our people are moving into Australia and New Zealand under the seasonal workers program. So definitely there would be a shortage of the labor force, but under the strategy that we've developed, it outlines how we would ensure that we manage the movement of our labor force into Australia and New Zealand. So I think one of the key solution that is outlined in the strategy itself is having a stable and a reasonable price per ton for the copra that has been produced. Like I said earlier, in the past, the utility can't compete with diesel because of the fluctuation in the price per ton for copra. So people would find themselves not wanting to, or it's not attractive for them to continue to produce copra because the price keeps on fluctuating, and then they would venture into other commodities that is more attractive for them. And I guess that's one of the key reasons why the shift of the labor force into Australia and New Zealand, because in the past, the common commodity for us is coconut or copra. So the strategy clearly outlines, based on a broad and wide consultation that we had with the farmers, with the millers, with the communities, we've sort of come up with a benchmarked price per ton of copra. And I think it seems reasonable if you look at it and you do your own math around that price, and then compare that with how much you would earn over 6 months period or 9 months in Australia, factor in all your personal costs and so forth, you would find yourself earning more if you retain in Vanuatu and focus on the coconut industry to support this strategy. So I think the strategy is what we would stand on moving forward for the next couple of years. But one key aspect, like I mentioned, in terms of retaining that price fixed, we have the strategy proposed a sort of a stabilization fund or viability cap funding that would absorb any fluctuation in the price should any point in time diesel becomes more competitive than copra. I hope I answered this question. Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Anthony. I saw a thumbs up from June, so it looks like yes. All right, now we want to bring to the floor Executive Director Francois Rogers. You have 1 minute. I'm time.
I'll do it in 50 seconds. Here you go. Hi, if you haven't met me yet, my name is Francois Rogers. I'm the Executive Director for Blue Planet Alliance. Again, part of our biggest mission is to make sure that every island country in the world has a 100% renewable energy goal setting. And so we're driving the climate ambition, but we like to partner with islands, leaders, organizations around the world, including people like Mana Pacific Buho, who's on here today as well too. And so we're looking for solutions, but the biggest thing we're doing today is bringing islands every 6 months to Hawaii, like Stuart and Anthony, who's been here already, and showing what we know already, but also continuously work towards this. So this virtual workshop is part of that as well too. We also have a bunch of experts on our payroll that is willing to help and do studies and do stuff. So again, our goal is to continue this pathway and continue to bring more islands to Hawaii. Next month, we have 9 more islands coming in. Bahamas, Barbados, BVI, Kiribati, Niue, Maldives, Samoa, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent Grenadine. I think that was it. So 9 islands are coming in. Did I miss anything? Yes.
Your time is
So I need a time. Anyway,
You
so
did
I just
not
want
miss
to thank
anything.
everybody for being here and sharing everything with us. Again, we're here as a resource and always willing to help any island who needs help. So please don't hesitate to reach us. And then every person on our fellowship, if you need to connect to any islands out there, please let me know. We'll connect you to the right people, and that's what we do. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Mahalo for joining us today. And of course, look out for the next session in May. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody for joining. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.